Go away. Die with your child for all I care. You'll never ruin my life again. You mean nothing to me. Get out of here." The sound of the slamming door wasn't just a noise. It was a cold hammer driving the final nail into the coffin of her last hopes. Those words, sharp and cruel, ended everything. The rainy night continued, washing away all memories and leaving Clara adrift amidst the ruins. From that moment on, her life was split in two, one half shattered with the rain and the other teetering on the fragments of her pain. Outside, the city was bracing for a violent storm. Rain lashed against the penthouse windows, rattling them as if they would shatter at any moment. Lightning ripped across the dark sky, and each flash revealed the sterile coldness of the interior. Everything was expensive, from the imported leather sofa to the shimmering crystal chandelier, but not a single corner held the warmth of a home. Clara sat hunched on the couch, her arms wrapped tightly around her swollen, 9-month pregnant belly. A sudden contraction gripped her abdomen, a savage clench like an iron fist. She gritted her teeth, cold sweat beading on her forehead. "Mark, honey," she called out weakly towards the bedroom, where her husband was sleeping soundly. I think it's time." There was no reply. Clara struggled to her feet, stumbling toward the bedroom. The acrid smell of liquor and cheap perfume hit her, making her stomach churn. Mark, her husband, was sprawled on the bed, his clothes disheveled. Her call had woken him. What time is it for all this noise?" he snapped, squinting at her with an annoyed look. "I'm in so much pain," Clara gasped, clinging to the doorframe. "We have to go to the hospital." Mark laughed, a contemptuous sound that made her heart sink. "Another act. You always have a new trick to bother me." He sat up, his handsome face now ugly with drink and irritation. "I told you I was tired tonight. Can't you just leave me alone for a minute?" "I'm not faking it, Mark. The baby is coming." Tears began to stream down Clara's face. The pain surged again, more violently this time, and she crumpled to the floor, clutching her belly. The argument escalated quickly. Clara's pleas only seemed to fuel Mark's rage. He accused her of deliberately ruining his evening, claiming that the baby was a mistake from the beginning, an anchor on his freedom. In a moment of fury, he shoved her hard on the shoulder. Clara lost her balance, falling flat onto the cold marble floor. The impact was dizzying, and the pain in her lower abdomen became unbearable. "Mark, please, take me to the hospital," she sobbed, looking up at him with desperate eyes. But his eyes were filled with nothing but cold cruelty. Instead of remorse, he pulled an empty suitcase from the closet. He roughly threw a few of her clothes inside, and then tossed the suitcase out into the hallway. "You want to go to the hospital? Go by yourself." As Clara writhed in pain, trying to crawl toward him, Mark stood at the door, his face as cold as stone. He spat out the most venomous words she had ever heard. "Go away. Die with your child for all I care. You will never ruin my life again. You mean nothing to me. Get out of here." Slam. The door slammed shut, trapping Clara outside with the rain and the darkness. She lay there on the cold hallway floor, rainwater from the window splashing onto her, mixing with her tears. Each contraction felt like it was tearing her body apart. But in that moment between life and death, a thought sparked in Clara's mind. "I have to live. My child has to live." She didn't know where the strength came from. Perhaps it was a mother's instinct. She crawled, inch by inch, out of the luxurious apartment complex. Under the pouring rain, her heavy body collapsed onto the pavement. With her last ounce of strength, she dialed the number of her only friend, Elara. "Elara, help me." Her voice was barely a whisper, almost drowned out by the rain. When Elara raced down to the building, the sight before her froze her in place. Clara was huddled on the sidewalk, soaked to the bone, trembling and pale. Without a word, Elara let out a furious cry, immediately helped her friend into the car, and floored the gas pedal, speeding like a maniac toward the hospital. In the delivery room, a true battle for survival began. The cold white lights, the constant beeping of the heart monitor, the urgent shouts of the doctors. Amidst that chaotic storm, Clara only heard Ilara's voice, her hand gripping hers like a steady anchor in a stormy ocean. "Push, Clara, for Leo, for your son." Clara let out a roar, a scream that held all her pain and rage. Amidst the final echoes of thunder, another sound rose, silencing everything else. The feeble yet powerful cry of a new life. A healthy baby boy had been born. A healthy, beautiful baby boy had been born. They placed the baby on her chest. Clara held her son, hot tears rolling down her face. They weren't tears of weakness, but of release and a new beginning. She kissed his tiny forehead, feeling his warmth and the absolute perfection of his life. She had done it. She and her son had survived. Looking at the tiny being nestled in her arms, Clara whispered, a sense of peace she had never known filling her soul. "Hello, Leo," she murmured, "my brave little lion." The fated rainy night had taken everything from her, a husband, a home, and her faith. But it had also given her the most precious thing of all, a tiny life, a new beginning, and her whole world. Morning sunlight streamed through a gap in the hospital room blinds, gently landing on Leo's tiny face. The baby was sleeping, his small pink lips puckered, occasionally twitching as if dreaming a sweet dream. Clara sat beside him, her eyes never leaving her son. 3 days had passed since that horrifying night. Her body was still sore, but her mind was clearer and brighter than ever before. In the quiet space, with only the sound of her son's steady breathing, every memory of her marriage to Mark replayed like a sad film. The promises, the disappointments, the arguments, and the climax of his cruelty on that rainy night. She had once loved that man, tried to hold on, and hoped he would change. But now, looking at the tiny life beside her, she understood that all hope had been extinguished. The love she had for her son had become a flame that incinerated every illusion about Mark. This flame not only brought warmth, but also forged her will into something as hard as steel. When Ilara walked in with a thermos of hot porridge, Clara looked up, her eyes no longer showing confusion or fear. Instead, they held a strange calmness. "Ilara, can you do me a favor?" "Anything," Ilara replied immediately, placing the thermos on the table. "Get me the divorce papers." Ilara paused for a second, then a proud smile spread across her face. She didn't ask questions or offer advice. She just nodded. "I'll get them right away." That afternoon, at the small dining table in the hospital room, Clara placed the divorce papers down. Her hand, still slightly shaky from childbirth, picked up the pen. Each stroke of her signature, Clara Nguyen, was a cut, severing the last tie to her past. She didn't cry, didn't hesitate. She was liberating herself and her son. Across town, Mark received an envelope of papers from a courier. He opened it, saw the divorce papers with Clara's clear signature, and just sneered. Child's play, he thought, just trying to act tough. He was completely convinced this was just an act of spite. A woman who had just given birth, with no job and no money, how long could she last? Sooner or later, she would realize she couldn't live without him, and would come back, crying and begging. He signed the papers carelessly, tossed the pen onto the table, and felt a sense of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. He didn't know that he had just signed the warrant for his own downfall. The days that followed were a harsh test of endurance. Ilara's apartment became a world for three. Leo's crying in the middle of the night, the smell of milk and baby powder, and stacks of diapers piled high. Clara barely slept. During the day, she was a full-time mother, clumsily learning how to bathe her son, lull him to sleep, and understand the meaning behind each cry. Her arms became more skilled at cradling, her voice more accustomed to humming lullabies. At night, when Leo was in a deep sleep, a different Clara emerged. She sat in front of her laptop, her eyes red from lack of sleep, but shining with a strange brilliance. She took on every freelance design job she could find online: a logo, a poster, a small brand identity. The money she earned wasn't much, but it was money earned with dignity, with self-reliance. Ilara would often quietly place a cup of hot milk next to her, looking at her friends hunched back in the dim blue light and feeling a pang of deep affection. About a week after Clara was discharged from the hospital, Ilara's phone rang. It was Mark. "How is she?" His voice on the other end was full of condescension and gloating. "How is she doing?" Crying her eyes out, "I bet. Has she realized how stupid she was yet?" Ilara was holding a fussy Leo. She cradled the phone between her shoulder and ear, patting the baby gently on the back, a cold smile on her face. "Oh, Mark, my phone has an automatic function that deletes trash. Clara, she's busy." Ilara paused, looked at the little angel in her arms who let out a big yawn, then continued with a sarcastic tone, each word like a needle jab. "She's busy being a mother to an angel and busy planning a wonderful life without you. Don't call again. You're a nuisance." She hung up, not giving him a chance to reply. She would be a wall of fire, protecting Clara and her son from that toxic man. The turning point came on a late afternoon when Clara felt most exhausted. Ilara received an urgent call from a friend who was a project manager at Lanson Corporation. The lead designer for a 5-star resort project had suddenly quit, leaving behind a mess and a looming deadline. "Clara, this is your chance," Ilara said right after hanging up, her eyes gleaming. "A huge project. Right up your alley. The pay is excellent." Clara was stunned. Lanson, it was a giant in the industry. But then, a wave of self-doubt immediately washed over her. She looked down at her worn-out loungewear, looked around the room cluttered with baby things. "How can I do it, Ilara? Look at me, a single mother, with a newborn. Who would trust such an important project to me?" Her voice cracked with insecurity. But then, Leo's soft cries from his bassinet brought her back to reality. She walked over and picked him up. Leo looked at her with big, clear eyes, his tiny hand gripping her finger. In that very moment, Clara understood. She couldn't be a victim forever. She couldn't let her son grow up and see his mother as weak and a failure. Ilara came and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Don't think you're doing this for yourself. Think of it as fighting for him. Let Leo see how talented and resilient his mother is." Those words were like an electric current running down Clara's spine. It awakened the lioness that had been dormant for too long. The fatigue and self-doubt vanished, replaced by an iron determination. She wouldn't just take this job, she would succeed. For Leo, she looked at Ilara, nodding firmly. "Okay, send them my portfolio." That night, Clara didn't sleep, but it wasn't because of her son's cries. It was because the fire of passion and ambition had been rekindled. She opened her laptop and began sketching her first ideas. Under the lamplight, this woman was no longer a discarded victim. She was a designer, a warrior, and most importantly, she was Leo's mother. And for her son, she could do anything. The conference room at Lanson Corporation was on the top floor of a glass tower, overlooking the entire city. The space was designed with a minimalist aesthetic, but exuded absolute power. A long, glossy wooden table, high-end leather chairs, and a circle of men in expensive suits, all with serious expressions. Clara walked in, and for a moment, she felt like a misplaced note. She wore a simple yet elegant business outfit that Ilara had helped her choose. But what made her stand out was the baby carrier on her chest, with little Leo fast asleep inside. The night before, her babysitter had unexpectedly cancelled, and Ilara was stuck in a terrible traffic jam. With no other choice, Clara had to bring her entire world to the most important meeting of her life. Scrutinizing eyes, some curious, others, annoyed, turned toward her. Self-doubt crept into her heart, but as her hand instinctively caressed Leo's small back, a surge of unwavering strength rose within her. She wasn't here to beg, she was here to prove her worth. She began her presentation. Her voice was initially a little shaky, but as the images of her passionate designs appeared on the large screen, her passion overwhelmed everything else. She spoke of creating a resort that was not only luxurious but also healing, a place where people could reconnect with nature and with themselves. Her energy and enthusiasm spread throughout the room, gradually replacing skepticism with nods of approval. Sitting at the head of the table, Nathan, the CEO of the corporation, was captivated. At first, he, like the others, was a little surprised to see a candidate with a baby, but then he was completely drawn into her presentation. He didn't just see excellent blueprints, he saw a profound soul behind them. His gaze shifted from Clara's passionate face to the angelic face of the baby sleeping peacefully in the carrier. He suddenly realized that this woman wasn't just presenting a project. She was fighting for the future of both herself and her child. The extraordinary strength hidden beneath her gentle demeanor touched something deep within him. When Clara finished, a brief silence filled the room, and then Nathan was the first to applaud. "Wonderful," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "We don't need to see any other proposals. Welcome to Lanson." Clara's life turned a new page. Nathan's words were not empty. On her very first day, he had a small room next to her office converted into a comfortable nursery. "So you can work with peace of mind while still being close to Leo," he explained simply. That thoughtful gesture, more than any words, warmed Clara's heart, which had been so cold for so long. Nathan gradually entered the small world of the mother and son in the most natural way. He didn't act as a CEO but as a friend. Sometimes he would stop by Leo's room, sit on the carpeted floor, and build wooden towers with the little boy. Leo's bright laughter and the gentle smile of the company's most powerful man became a familiar sight, erasing all distance. Clara had built a fortified wall around her heart. But Nathan's kindness, respect, and sincerity were like a stream of water, patiently eroding that wall day by day. The culmination came one winter evening. Leo suddenly developed a high fever and began to have convulsions. Clara received the frantic call from the daycare and was so flustered she dropped her bag. Nathan was just leaving a meeting when he saw her panicked face. He didn't ask a single question, just said, "Get in the car, I'll take you." He immediately called his secretary. "Cancel the meeting with the Tokyo partner. This is an emergency." He stayed with her all night at the hospital. When Clara, exhausted, fell asleep in her chair, he was the one who stayed awake, applying a cool cloth and monitoring Leo's temperature. The next morning, when Clara woke up, she saw Nathan sitting by the bed, his hand gently holding Leo's tiny one. His face showed clear signs of fatigue, but his eyes were incredibly tender. That image completely shattered her final defenses. This wasn't pity, this was care, shared concern, and the presence of a man she could rely on. A few weeks later, at the preschool, the teacher assigned the children a drawing exercise on My Hero. When Clara came to pick up her son, the teacher handed her Leo's drawing with a warm smile. On the paper was a tall man in a suit, holding a little boy's hand. When the teacher asked who it was, Leo had proudly said, "That's Daddy Nathan. He's a superhero because he always protects Mommy and me." That evening, Clara showed the drawing to Nathan. He looked at it for a long time, then looked up at her, his eyes filled with a deep affection she had never seen before. Their love had bloomed like this, without a single flowery confession. It was nurtured by small acts of kindness and affirmed by the pure heart of a child. While Clara's life was blossoming, Mark was sinking deeper into darkness. His small design company, already struggling, finally went bankrupt. The fatal blow came from losing a major contract to a new resort project called Phoenix Reborn by Lanson Corporation. He read the articles praising the project's breakthrough design vision without knowing that the person who created that vision was the wife he had abandoned. When the last check bounced, his girlfriend Jessica also packed her designer bags and left with a sneer, "I don't date failures." His business associates also began to distance themselves. The luxurious penthouse became empty and cold, the liquor bottles emptied quickly, but the loneliness and bitterness only filled up more. He started to realize what he had lost, but his pride wouldn't allow him to admit it. In his desperation, Mark applied for jobs everywhere. A series of rejection emails flooded in, until one day, a glimmer of hope appeared. He was called for a final round interview for a head of design position at a subsidiary of Lanson. He was ecstatic. This was his last chance to start over. He wore his last good suit, trying to hide his fatigue and haggard appearance. He walked into the Lanson building with a pounding heart. When he was led to the conference room, his heart was in his throat. The door opened. The person sitting behind the large wooden table, facing him, was not some middle-aged director. It was Clara. She was wearing a navy blue business dress, her hair neatly tied in a bun, exuding professionalism and authority. She looked at him, her eyes calm and unreadable. Time seemed to stand still. Mark was frozen, his throat dry. The woman he had once thrown out of his house on a rainy night was now the one holding the fate of his career in her hands. Clara calmly picked up his resume and glanced through it. Her voice was steady and professional, devoid of any personal emotion. "Your work experience is quite impressive." She put the paper down and looked him straight in the eyes. Her gaze was sharp as a blade. "Unfortunately, your vision is too narrow. You once owned a priceless asset, but chose to throw it away. We cannot hire someone with such poor judgment. Thank you for coming. You may leave now." Each word she spoke was a hammer blow to his last shred of self-respect. He couldn't say a word, could only stand up like a robot, stumbling out of the room. As the door closed behind him, his world completely collapsed. The shock of being rejected by Clara had stripped away Mark's last vestiges of illusion and pride. He wandered the streets, his mind empty. For the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about money or his ruined career. The image of Clara, powerful and cold behind the desk, haunted him. But the image that pained him most was the memory of a stormy night, of the woman writhing at his feet. And the child, the son he had never once looked at. A bitter, belated regret welled up inside him. He had nothing left to lose. In his desperation, he sought out the only place he could think of, Alara's apartment. He rang the doorbell, not just once, but frantically, as if afraid that if he stopped, his last bit of courage would vanish. The door opened. Alara stood there, her arms crossed. Her eyes held not hatred, but the cold contempt of someone looking down at a pathetic creature. I want to see Clara," Mark stammered, his voice no longer holding its former arrogance. And my son." Alara sneered, a sarcastic smile playing on her lips. "Your son?" she repeated, emphasizing each word. "Are you talking about the baby you wanted to abandon with his mother on that rainy night?" "I'm sorry, Mark. The DNA might be yours, but father is a title earned through love and responsibility, not something you get by default. And you've never been worthy." He tried to say something, but Alara's words were like daggers piercing his heart. She stepped inside, retrieved a glittering invitation card, and threw it at his feet. "Tomorrow night, the launch event for the Phoenix Reborn Resort Collection. Clara's passion project. Go there and see how she's risen from the ashes you created." The door slammed shut, leaving Mark alone with the card and his profound humiliation. The next night, in the luxurious ballroom of a five-star hotel, Mark blended into the crowd. He'd gotten a temporary job as a waiter, wearing a cheap uniform, a tray of drinks in his hand. He tried to hide in a dark corner, feeling like a thief out of place in this glamorous world. The dazzling stage lights, the soft music, the elegant laughter, it all seemed to mock his pathetic state. And then he saw her. Clara stepped onto the stage. She wore an emerald green evening gown, hugging her slender but vibrant figure. Her hair was styled in a neat bun, revealing her graceful neck and sparkling diamond earrings. Her face was radiantly made up, exuding a mature beauty, a confidence and power he had never seen in her before. He was stunned. This was not the weak, dependent woman he once knew. This was a queen. She smiled at the audience and took the microphone. Her clear, warm voice echoed throughout the ballroom. "I'd like to dedicate this success to one fateful rainy night," she began, and Mark's heart stopped. "That night took everything from me, my family, my faith, and my home, but it also gave me the most precious gift." She paused, her eyes turning toward the backstage with a look full of love. "That is my son, and he is the strength that allows me to stand here today." Just then, Nathan, in a sharp suit, walked out holding little Leo's hand. The boy wore a tiny suit identical to Nathan's, looking like a little gentleman. In Leo's hand was a vibrant bouquet of sunflowers. The entire room erupted in applause. Nathan and Leo joined Clara, forming a perfect family portrait. Nathan gently kissed Clara's cheek and took the microphone. His gaze was directed at the crowd, but it seemed to pierce through everyone, stopping right where a stunned Mark stood. He spoke, his voice warm but every word sharp as steel. "I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the past for abandoning her, so I had the opportunity to find and cherish this precious gem." Crash. The tray in Mark's hand clattered to the floor. Dozens of glasses shattered, the sharp sound cutting through the applause. All eyes turned to him, some with pity, others with curiosity, and even contempt. He was so humiliated, he wished the ground would swallow him whole. He lowered his head and scurried away like a ghost. After the event, in the deserted parking lot, Mark blocked the path of Clara's family. He had no pride left. He fell to his knees on the cold concrete, tears welling up in his eyes. "Clara, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, give me a chance. Let me see my son. Let me be a part of his life," he cried, grabbing the hem of her dress. Nathan immediately stepped forward, shielding both Clara and Leo. But Clara gently placed her hand on his, signaling that she could handle it herself. She calmly stepped forward, looking directly into the eyes of the man kneeling at her feet. Her voice no longer held hatred, only the finality of someone who had completely moved on from the past. "You don't have the right to call my son by that name. His real father is the man who was there for him when he was sick, the one who teaches him how to be a good person, the one who loves him every day, not the man who abandoned him on a rainy night." She leaned down slightly, her voice growing sharper. "Our happiness is built on the very fragments you created. So, in a way, I have to thank you. Thank you for leaving." Just then, little Leo, perhaps frightened by the strange man crying, clutched tightly onto Nathan's trousers. The boy looked up with his innocent face, his voice clear and full of trust. "Daddy, I'm scared of this man." The word "daddy," it came from the mouth of the son he had abandoned, meant for another man. It was like a final knife twist, drawing no blood but inflicting ultimate pain, stabbing directly into Mark's heart. It affirmed a cruel truth. He had lost everything. He had not only lost a wife, he had lost a family, a future, and the fatherhood he had never learned to cherish. Clara didn't say another word. She turned and took Nathan's hand. Leo nestled against his father's leg. They walked away together, the backs of a complete and happy family silhouetted under the lights, growing distant and then vanishing. Mark collapsed. He looked up with vacant eyes. Across from him, towering on the roof of a high-rise building, was a giant electronic billboard. On it was the radiant, vibrant face of Clara, the face of the Phoenix Reborn project. Now, Mark was left alone, in the empty parking lot, with the torment and belated regret that would follow him for the rest of his life. He had once held the entire world in his hands, but he had thrown it into the storm himself, and that storm, in the end, had drowned him.